Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Recently, I gave a talk at Content Designers China, and in the talk, I shared the framework of building a resilient career, stories of success and failure, as well as actions you can take to design that career for yourself. Now, I wanted to share this talk here with you as well, and hopefully there will be lessons that resonates with you. And as always, if you like today's video, please make sure to like and subscribe. And let's do it. For the past few years, I've realized that resilience has been a key theme in my journey. And when it comes to my career, resilience isn't just about the ability to bounce back after things get hard. I realized that it's more about being intentional and making choices, setting boundaries, and designing your career so that you can grow sustainably. And because of that, then you'll be able to take on the opportunities that truly matters and stay adaptable no matter what comes next. So this is what I want to talk to you all about today, how we can bring the same intentionality we bring to design, our actual job, into our own career growth. And let's get started. All right. When I think about designing your career for resilience, I think about it in three sections. And the first part I want to talk about is adaptability, basically growing through that change. Adaptability has been at the heart of my career, especially as I've watched our industry really transform at an extremely fast speed in the past few years. When I first started my job back in 2019, I think we were still trying to, fight for content design to have a seat at the table. And then AI happened. And all of a sudden we went from, oh, let's make sure content design have a voice to, are we still gonna have our job by next year? And I've observed from my perspective that a lot of company has restructured and shift their content design resourcing to where AI isn't fully ready to take over just yet. So things like crafting the AI experience, creating chatbots, growth design, fintech, or other regulatory heavy work, and so on. The bar has certainly shifted. I wouldn't say it raised, but it certainly has shifted. And we're not just expected to deliver good copy anymore. We really needed to step into that business conversation and truly engage strategically and not just as output providers. So how do you stay relevant when everything is changing so fast? And here's what I've kind of learned. One, position yourself strategically. Don't wait for change to happen to you. And this is what I mean. When I moved from Microsoft to Uber, I knew that having mobile experience under my belt was going to be very crucial for my career growth. I was working on a predominantly desktop application, and then having a larger user base it also means more impact for my career as well. So on top of that, I knew that I am still early in my career, and it is not a good idea to niche down too early or box myself for just being a B2B content designer. So that's why I pivoted. And then when I moved from Uber to my current role, I wasn't just changing, for a new experience. I wasn't chasing for that. I was actually intentionally and deliberately positioning myself in a harder field. Everybody talks about how difficult it is to work in fintech as a content designer because of how regulatory heavy it is. Fintech and regulatory heavy work are places where human judgment and nuanced communication still matter a lot. So by switching to more complex areas, not only was I able to fulfill my intention of being a versatile content designer, I was also constantly challenging myself to stay adaptable rather than getting too comfortable in one field. Now, here's something that I've noticed that could be a huge opportunity for content designers like you all here in the audience today: the convergence of global UX patterns. This is what being chronically online has its benefits. I spend a lot of time on both the Douyin app and the TikTok app. And one thing I like to do a lot is to compare the features of two apps and see how features that exist on Douyin platform transforms into the TikTok platform, and see how features just overall evolve across different platforms. When a feature that exists on Douyin gets adapted onto TikTok, I try to understand the business justification and the rationale behind why we're bringing something onto the platform. And I try to also predict what's going to come next. I've been successful for one so far with like the image recognition leading to TikTok Shop, but that's pretty much it. But I'll keep the guessing game going. But all I'm trying to say is, I think content designers in China have a very unique advantage that people from elsewhere might not have. And what I mean by that is you all have a understanding of user behaviors and interaction patterns that global companies or like US-centric UI principles are desperately trying to crack. You have the ability to see how features need to be adapted in different cultural contexts, different ways of consuming content, and even different social dynamics. And I don't think that's just cultural knowledge. I think that's actual strategic business insights that you all already have that people like me, working in Silicon Valley might not be equipped. And I think that could be a really huge opportunity, and I'm already seeing a lot of the UX patterns being converged together. These days, I think AI tools, are emerging, obviously, and I thought I would panic more than where I am today, and I don't think I panicked as much as I thought I would. I got my hands on some of these tools just enough to understand their capabilities and limitations, and then use them if they are actually truly helpful for my workflow. I'm someone who learns better through doing, and I am not someone who's very good at studying theory, so this is something that has been really helpful for me to stay adaptive through the era of AI. I also invested in understanding the business side better this year. I took a PM and business course recently so that I could speak the language of my cross-functional partners better. And I've also been tasked to take more initiatives on leading, the growth sector of the work at my workplace. And I think being able to equip myself with more business knowledge and think more like a PM can really truly help me grow as a designer. The second point I wanted to talk about is to optimize for shipping and not perfection. This might have been the most important lesson I've learned as a content designer, and the most important lesson that I want you to take when it comes to adaptability. When I first started my career in UX, I used to aim for 100% of the best user experience all the time. I spent a lot of time agonizing over not winning a battle with a PM, or seeing my original design becoming compromised to certain degrees. And these days, I aim for 95%. I don't aim for 100% anymore. And that additional 5% is the flexibility I leave for my cross-functional team. Here's the reality. Requirements change mid-projects all the time. Your engineering team might find a technical constraint that they cannot bypass easily. Product leadership might have a light bulb moment, and now all of a sudden the entire team shifts direction to try something else. And this is not chaos. This is not chaos. This is just another Tuesday. If a design change requires 3 months of engineering efforts, when we could have a less optimal experience, I would say slightly less optimal experience that takes only 3 days, I think it makes sense to not over-index on perfection. And remember, at the end of the day, if nothing ships, then it means nothing to the company, and then it means nothing to you as a designer. The key is to build that flexibility from the start rather than feeling devastated every time priorities shift. And I think that is a very important lesson for me to learn as I grew in the past 5 years. Next part I want to talk about is to embrace the process of figuring out. And the truth is, working with different kinds of stakeholders, changing priorities, adapting to changes within our industry, that's not going away anytime soon. And I've noticed that people who are already anticipating these changes rather than being surprised or taken back when these happens are the ones who truly thrive in our field. When I moved from a B2B desktop software at Microsoft to a mobile, much larger user base, consumer-facing application, I had to learn a lot of new things. I need to learn brevity because the surface is much smaller than a desktop. I had to learn about localization constraints because we have users from all over the world at Uber, and then completely different user psychology as well. You might be asking, how did I do it? I spent my first 90 days at Uber truly reading everything. I'm talking about like PRDs, competitive analysis, company priorities, past research. And I sat in a lot of our user research sessions and took a lot of notes for myself. It truly helped me formulate my point of view as a content designer, and I believe it has made a pretty good impact as I started my new roles. And I carried that with me as I started my new job that I have currently as well. And I think the common thread through all of the things that I've just talked about so far is that whether you're positioning yourself in or emergent fields, or trying to build that flexibility into your process, or trying to learn something completely different, success comes from action. It doesn't come from striving for perfection. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just need to be willing to start. All right, the next pillar I want to talk about when it comes to building a resilient career is sustainability. So adaptability helps you respond, but sustainability helps you persist. Like many things in life, career growth is a marathon, not a sprint. And if we push too hard without care, we burn out before even reaching the finish line. I'm gonna get very personal here, real quick. In 2024, I personally experienced severe burnout, and I had to take a 3-month medical leave. It was bad. It was not glamorous. I was having constant nightmares, and at the peak of it all, I couldn't manage a single workday without crying. And yet, even when all of this is happening, I still felt guilty about stepping away. I felt bad for the people who had to pick up my work. And even when I finally started to take that leave, I was thinking to myself, well, if I have all these time off, shouldn't I be like productive? Maybe I should make more YouTube videos. Maybe I should try like new baking recipes. But when I finally, when I was finally taking that break, I realized that for the first 2 months, I did not do anything. I just rotted. I slept a lot. I stayed at home. I went to therapy weekly, which was good. And I barely had the energy to do anything. I barely had the energy to function. Month 3 is when I finally start to feel a bit better, feel a bit more human as well. I went on a small trip to see a rocket launch in Florida, and the rocket did not end up launching. But you know what? That was kind of the moment something clicked for me. If a rocket can be delayed and still be okay, why am I so hard on myself? Is my work really that important? Like, is it really that urgent? That perspective shift really helped me realize that, like, I'm not building rockets. I can give myself permission to rest as well. So my recovery process, it was not very neat or linear either. I didn't suddenly like wake up one day and just all of a sudden like, yay, I'm good again. No, and honestly, when it was time for me to go back to work, I wasn't truly ready to go back either. So I started at 50% capacity, and then month 2 went up to 75%. It gave me a softer start, and I would recommend people to do that if you're at the at a similar position where I was before. You don't have to be 100%. You don't have to return 100%. You don't have to start 100%. You don't even need to operate at 100% capacity at all the time. And making sure to talk to yourself and checking with yourself is pretty important as you restart and getting back to work again. During that time, I also did a lot of reflection, a lot of soul searching. And I think growing up, I believed my worth came from achievements. So that's like good grades, taking on leadership roles, playing my cello very well, just things that my parents would be proud of. And as an adult, because we're no longer in that school structure, that transferred into, work. And I thought, if I'm not constantly thriving, then that means I'm failing. And I internalized that idea so much that I came to the conclusion that I don't deserve love without accomplishments. That's generational trauma that I'm still I'm still working to break. Because at the end of the day, I am so much more than my job. My parents do not actually care about my career milestones as much as them just caring about me being happy. Honestly, I doubt my parents even understand what I do, but that's a separate thing. And like, if I disappear tomorrow, let's say, nobody is going to remember the battle that I won against a PM over some button labels. So like, why do I have to be so hard on myself? So what does sustainability look like now? Here are a few things that I practice. Number one is to set boundaries intentionally. Boundaries are your responsibilities, and my therapist has told me how people respond to your boundaries is a reflection of them, not you. These days, I find myself saying a lot of the things to my cross-functional partners, like, hey, like, here's my current workload. These are all the things that I'm working on. If you were to add this one more thing, what's the priority of this thing amongst this list that I have right here? Or like, what's the timeline compared to some of my other projects that I'm trying to wrap up? Some people adjust right away. Some people get the message. Other people are more like visual learners. They need to see like a Gantt chart or a pie chart to understand how much you're working, but whatever it takes. Two, I check in with myself regularly. If you're dreaming about work and they're not pleasant dreams, it is time to pause. It is time. And I'm going to be really nerdy here. It's like when your internet browser starts to crash on the website that you go to frequently. What you usually do is you go into browser history, you clear that cache, you clear that history. You need to do the same thing, but for your brain, right? So for me, that looks like sometimes like going to a dance classes. I'm barely keeping up with the instructor's moves, so there is no way for me to try to think about work or deadlines. Or like recently, my parents were in town and neither of my parents speak English. So I had to be the translator, the tour guide, and then just kind of use my brain at full capacity to be like planning the trip and then translating two languages at the same time. And how can I be thinking about work when my brain is so occupied in that sense? And ask yourself, what are some of the activities that can help you clear that internal cache of your own? And lastly, creating that support system. Asking for help felt very unnatural for me. I grew up in a collectivist society where asking others for help is kind of a big burden. And I hated that growing up. And here's the thing, everyone has been helped by someone at some point in their lives, and most people want to return that favor. So even small asks like asking a friend, like, what is it like working at your company before you start interviewing for the role? Like, these are things that can save you so much time and energy in the long run. And I remind myself, by asking, I'm also giving others the opportunity to support me. And during my burnout, a lot of my friends had similar experiences and were able to provide me lots of support in that sense as well. So I encourage you to do the same too. And bringing it back to design, sustainability is a design decision. You can't build a resilient career without building a system to protect your own energy. And at the end of the day, you cannot take care of your end users without taking care of yourself first. So the last pillar I want to talk about is influence, how you go from execution to leadership. When I was in grad school, I went to one of those like really draining networking events, but there was one thing that I took away from the networking session that I still remember, and I will probably remember forever. Networking isn't just about who you know, it's also about who knows you. It stuck with me for a very long time, and it really changed the way I see professional relationships. Similarly, career growth isn't just about what you do. It's also about who sees it, how it's valued, and how it shapes your opportunities later on. This was a painful lesson for me to learn as well, and I'm not a pro at it. I'm still trying to be better at this as well, personally. I grew up learning to be quiet and polite in the workplace, be humble, talk down at my work so that I don't make other people feel uncomfortable, and then always try to look for opportunities to give the crown to others whenever I see fit. For years, I was kind of trapped in reactive mode because I wanted people to be happy. I would say yes to everyone, while my actual expertise pretty much was just remained invisible in project trackers or spreadsheets. And when it comes to larger like share out opportunities, I thought I had nothing valuable to offer. So I never really took up on any of these opportunities. I would spend so much time perfecting my thoughts during meetings that by the time my thoughts are fully formulated, someone else might have already shared a similar thought, even though it's less polished, and then taken the credit for it. So this really hurt my career when I tried to go for promotion one year after working on 50 plus projects. I was overworked in that. But my manager's feedback hit like a punch. They told me, hey, I know what you have done, but leadership just did not have enough visibility to the work you did. I was furious. Like, how could all that work? I worked so hard that year. How could all of that work matters to nobody? Obviously I went through a lot of time trying to think through like, why is this happening? And let me tell you about the moment where it actually clicked for me. I was working on launching autonomous vehicles onto the Uber platform a couple years back, and I had a PM partner who is one of those who just sees our work as purely output. Just write the strings, here's the design, fill it in, and like let me move on with my day. Here we have this really groundbreaking new technology, right? And I knew that we needed foundational alignment from day one. But obviously I was getting treated like someone who just takes orders. So instead of accepting that dynamic, it was too much at stake. I designed a solution instead. I created a cross-functional workshop with some of the other content partners. I brought in marketing, legal, product, design into one room to really tackle the foundational questions together. Like, what do we call these rides? Do we call them autonomous vehicles, self-driving vehicles? Like, what do we call them? Who do we call, like, what do we call the people who sit in the car monitoring these rides but aren't necessarily Uber drivers? Should autonomous vehicles have a different tone to sound more futuristic, or should they just stick closely to the Uber's brand? And what should people feel when they step into the car? Like, these are all questions that I already ask myself whenever I pick up a new project, but making this a collaborative process for the team was honestly quite meaningful and fun as well, because it gave people the exposure of all the thinking, all the strategic thinking that I would go through before providing that output. So I think that workshop changed a lot of things by positioning myself as the person who could see across these domains and facilitate alignment. I shifted from reactive execution to strategic leadership. I wasn't just writing strings anymore at that point. I was actually shaping how Uber would introduce autonomous vehicle technology onto the platform. And it's a revolutionary technology, and it's being introduced for the first time to the world. So it's a lot. It was definitely very, very fun for me. And the feedback I got after we successfully launched tells the whole story. that same PM partner who was making me, take his orders, actually wrote in my feedback, and I'm gonna read his quote. Her business influence shines through at every stage. We all value Yvonne's expertise, checking with her to determine the best results. I am always impressed with Yvonne's ability to see the forest and the trees. So that's pretty nice. I was able to change him from someone who's just like did not value content design at all to someone who's actually a good partner through my design process. And I learned from this experience that influence isn't just about having a big title or working at a prestigious company or being the loudest in the room. It's about identifying what is missing. And in this case, it's that cross-functional alignment on a foundational level on a very complex and new product. And then position yourself as a problem solver, as someone who can solve this problem, right? Sometimes the most powerful thing that you can do is to convene the right people in the same room and facilitate that change to happen. It's going to be a conversation. People are going to realize very quickly that it's a conversation that everybody needed, but no one was having. And you are the person who is making that conversation happen. So these days, here's how I approach building influence now. Again, not perfect, still working on it, but I hope these tips could be helpful for you. One is to build influence intentionally. Share your work. Don't be shy. You might think that your work means nothing, but people are going to pick up useful lessons along the way. Talk about the impact you're driving, and then support other people's projects too, which I'm sure a lot of you are already doing. I started over-communicating with my cross-functional partners about the work that I was doing. I started also documenting design and content rationales directly in Figma because I realized that a lot of people often see our work as just cheap, like words are just cheap. The output comes out cheap. I also began speaking up in meetings more, even if my thoughts weren't fully formulated yet, and I'm not perfect at it, but I think it actually created more room for ideas to bounce around. And you will realize that there's more collaborative thinking that happens when you throw out an idea that might not be 100% your standard. Number two is to understand career ladders and rubrics. This one is very much technical. Know what's expected at the next level so that you can aim strategically over there. After that promotion feedback I got from my manager, I spent some time with my mentor just mapping out what strategic partnership actually looked like versus pure execution, which was what I was doing at the time. I studied how other senior designers positioned themselves and positioned their work, and then identified the gap between where I was and where I needed to be. If your workplace doesn't have a rubric or clearly identified career ladders, there's a lot of resources on the internet, which is really good. One of the places that I would sometimes go to is called progress.fyi. That's the website. And I would highly recommend you to check out some different companies' rubrics when it comes to career ladders and identify key themes of these companies. And hopefully that'll be helpful as you navigate through the career ladder. And the next point is to navigate office politics thoughtfully. Focus on relationships, alignment, visibility, without compromising integrity. Going back to the example of that autonomous vehicle project, it really taught me that sometimes the most powerful political move is to solve a problem that everyone feels but nobody wants to solve. And I learned to identify where cross-functional friction was happening and then position myself as the person that could actually facilitate that alignment. So I would highly recommend you to find your way to navigate politics in an authentic way as well. The next point is to be strategic about moves. Sometimes growth requires you to switch teams. If you find yourself consistently not getting that promotion, maybe it's time to switch a team. Maybe it's time to even switch a company. You need to prioritize yourself to access the opportunities that actually align with your goals. I realized by, year 3 that I could not stay pigeonholed into one type of work forever. I moved from Microsoft's B2B desktop product to Uber's consumer mobile experience. And at that time, I was trying to build that versatility. And the versatility actually gave me more choices later on in my career. So I think, building influence overall doesn't mean abandoning your values or becoming someone you're not. It's more about making your expertise visible so that you have the impact that you are capable of and very much well-deserving of. If you tend to have that quiet and more thoughtful approach, don't see that as a weakness. It can actually become your strength when you channel it into creating frameworks, facilitating alignments, and helping others succeed. I believe that you have the ability to create something that works for you. All right, I talked a lot. To wrap everything up, I think resilience isn't just surviving challenges. It's designing your career intentionally around 3 pillars. Adaptability, so building that flexibility so that you can grow through all the changes. Sustainability, taking care of yourself so that you can keep going in moments that are difficult. And then influence, move from execution to leadership and shape your opportunities accordingly. It's not going to be a good talk without some action items for you. So here are some action items that I highly encourage you to take this week. Number 1 is to reflect what is currently working in your career and what is not working. What needs some design or redesign for yourself, right? Number 2 is to plan a little bit. I hope you can spend some time to identify one way to build adaptability, sustainability, or influence in this chapter of your career. And I'm going to give you a deadline by the end of the year. I hope you can identify something by then. And then lastly, I encourage you to share. I want you to talk about your growth goals with your mentor, your peers, or if you're feeling bold, the internet, so that we all can give you that feedback and accountability. And remember, just like designing for users, we can design our careers with intention. You have the power to create a career that is resilient, sustainable, and impactful for yourself. With that, I think we have some pre-submitted questions. So I'm gonna go to that. I did not prep for these questions, so makes it more authentic, The first question, how has running your YouTube channel made you a better content designer? And any unexpected crossovers between personal content creation and professional UX writing? That's such a good question. And the question also remembered my handle tag at Yvonne.ux. So thank you for remembering that. I appreciate it. That's a really good question. And I think for me, the biggest crossover between creating content for myself versus creating content in an application is that I still need to understand the user needs. I need to understand that my channel has a lot of early career people who are very eager to learn from someone who is in the industry, but they also don't have enough context where if I talk in a way that, if I use industry jargon that everybody understands, it might not translate to them. So I use a lot of that same thinking when it comes to being empathetic about my users versus being empathetic to my audience to create my content. And it is a big process for me to consolidate years of knowledge into a little video. A lot of work goes into it, which is why my consistency on my YouTube channel is not the best. But I really try to make it easy to understand, make it clear, and make it really useful that people can take away with a lot of helpful tips and tricks as they navigate into their content career. One of the things that's kind of unexpected that I really enjoyed ever since I started my YouTube channel is the ability to connect with a lot of design professionals from all over the world. It's really cool when I can just strike a casual conversation with a content designer in Africa or a product designer in Sydney, all that kind of stuff. And it just makes the world feel so much smaller. It makes the design community feel so much smaller as well. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity, and I'm really happy that I decided to just give this a try. Next question. What other product / design area have you studied outside content design, and what materials would you recommend? I mentioned this a little bit during my talk, but I would recommend highly that you spend some time learning about the business, learning about PM's perspective, learning about the languages, and how someone evaluates whether a product has a product market fit. What are some of the frameworks that they use? I took some lessons this year, and that has been pretty helpful. And there's still a lot of materials that I need to go back and digest, but it already opened my eyes so much more, and I've already seen really helpful conversations being made between myself and my cross-functional partners. I would recommend that. Let's see, next question. Did you lose passion for content design at any point during your burnout? If yes, can you share any strategies that help you regain that passion? And if not, what keeps you going at content design, and what is your strongest motivation? The real answer, no, just kidding. I was gonna say that I am in the United States on a work visa, so it's not like I have a ton of choice to just give up a career or give up a job whenever I want to. I mean, obviously, I can just choose to start my life over in China, but what about my husband and my friends and all the communities that I've built? But the real answer is I don't think I lost my passion, but I think I lost sight on why it even mattered. I was so focused on, my worth, my work, my leveling, and all that kind of stuff, when I tell people a lot, my very first content design project, my very first content design task was actually explaining to my grandma how to use my little Nokia phone when I was in 6th grade. And I think a lot about communities that get left behind because technology evolves so quickly and leaving them unprepared. Well, we can just craft experience that's so much easier for everybody to enjoy, for everyone to be a part of the changes. And these days my grandma can message me, send me pictures and all that kind of stuff through smartphone, and I try to tell myself that. And another part is more related to my struggle growing up in the United States and navigating in a foreign country when you don't have the language proficiency. It is so incredibly difficult. So I think I consistently remind myself that I need to do my work well, and I need to do it in a way that justifies my experience as a 16-year-old. If someone else is in my similar situation, I hope when they use the product that I built, it's easy enough for them to navigate, even if English is not their first language. So these are some of the things. It's more personal that I guess keeps me feeling motivated at moments where I kind of just forgot why it even mattered to be a content designer. And I think it's one of those fields where you can have a really big impact through seemingly small changes. And I think the responsibility of it all keeps me motivated. So I hope that answers your question. And I think that's all the questions we have here. Thank you again for spending your Friday evening with me. I hope this was insightful and helpful for you. And to continue the conversation, you can find me on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn as well. And I just want to thank Anna and Anna again for inviting me to talk with you all. And I am so happy that I was here today. And I hope we can all stay connected as well. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye!